Good afternoon, dear ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome. A warm welcome to this last session of today, the cultural frontiers of science, imagination, influence, and inclusion. And today we will explore how imagination can help us prepare for positive futures, what we can learn from institutions that act as laboratories of collective foresight, and how engaging citizens is not only a nice to have, but can become more and more a tool for soft power and diplomacy. And as always, please engage, ask questions after our discussion, and if you want to share something online, don't forget to use the hashtag GESDA Summit. My name is Niniane Paeffgen. I'm with GESDA, and I'm very excited that we have three amazing speakers joining us today from the US in Santa Barbara. We have Henrietta Fore. She is chair of GESDA's Citizens Forum and also a member of the board and former executive director of UNICEF. From Berlin, in Germany, we have Stefan Brandt. He is the director of Futurium. It's also called the House of Futures, and a hybrid museum and public forum where people engage and imagine possible future, and where everything revolves around the question, how do we want to live? And we have with us from the UK, Katherine Mathieson. She is the director of the Royal Institution, a historic charity dedicated to bringing scientists and the public together to celebrate, explore, and share science. And before we go into the discussion, I would like to bring the attention to why are we here today? Why do we need to talk about cultural imagination? And maybe some of you have heard of the Geneva Public Portal to Anticipation. GESDA wanted to make the radar, the science breakthrough radar, accessible to a broader public, and that's why we went to where most of the people went this year, to Japan, for the World Expo. And we brought you a little video so that you who were not there can imagine a bit what did we do, and then based on the video we will go into the discussion.
Technologies are poised to reshape almost every aspect of our lives. Advanced AI is restructuring our economies and societies. Gene editing is providing cures for diseases once thought untreatable. Neurotechnologies that help balance our moods could soon be on the market. How do people feel about these advances? What do they think needs to be more urgently addressed? What is coming up in 10 years that they cannot even imagine? GESDA's Geneva Public Portal to Anticipation, created in partnership with EPFL's Laboratory for Experimental Musology, EM+, helps us answer these questions. The portal is an immersive space where citizens are invited to imagine possible futures driven by science and technology. They explore scientific breakthroughs anticipated in the next 5, 10, and 25 years, drawn from GESDA's Science Breakthrough Radar. By choosing topics, emotions, countries, and timeframes, their inputs are transformed by generative AI into unique visions of the future.
I got a vision with advanced AI, more in the future, like 25 years. I picked trust because I'm optimistic about the future. I love to see advanced AI helping humans and group of humans instead of like the fear of taking over our jobs and our lives. I just want to see a future where we're augmented together.
It was a fantastic experience. So I created the first bubble around knowledge foundation and then synthetic biology. And I was surprised in the vision to see a surprise treaty on synthetic biology.
This kind of citizen engagement is about democratizing access to science anticipation, empowering citizens to think about and shape our shared future. And it's about listening to people's responses to inform decision-making.
And what these bubbles do, and what this whole anticipation of science and diplomacy, is to think about what issues are coming up. Health, environment, nutrition, and how our brains interoperate with machines. It's going to be a very exciting future, and this makes us think about it.
Anticipation is especially important for citizens and from a societal perspective. If you want to have a say and influence, the first step is to understand better and to try to grasp what does it mean for me. It's so important that there is conversation between scientists, policymakers and citizens.
At the World Expo 2025 in Osaka, Japan, we've welcomed over 1 million visitors so far. What do their interactions tell us at a glance? People want to imagine a bright future, with joy by far the most popular emotion chosen to create visions. Healthcare and human augmentation are the topics that fascinate people the most. Imagining the future inspires people in the present. 87% of people leave the portal feeling more empowered to shape the future. The future must be co-created, not just in the lab or government office, but with all of us. By anticipating and connecting scientists, business, citizens and policymakers, we ensure that the benefits of science can be accessible to all.
So with that, a very short summary of the Geneva Public Portal to Anticipation. We will start our conversation around the I, imagination. Henrietta, you as the chair of the GESDA Citizens Forum, why is imagination so important? And what have you learned from the citizens?
Thank you, Niniane, and it is a great pleasure to be here. So this was a very exciting moment in Japan. We really didn't realize how people would react to it. But when you actually see some of the results, you realize that the things you already know. We human beings are so curious about our human state. So we are most interested in human augmentation, whether it is to live to be 150 years old or to be disease-free. Whatever it is, we're interested in ourselves. And so when we came to Japan, we were interested if people were fearful about the future. And many of the tourists who were there that we saw were worried about the disruptions. But as the Japanese contingent and people came, joy became this overwhelming emotion. People are very hopeful about the future. And they see themselves in the future and what science and technology can bring. So they're expecting a lot from all of us. It is an enormous responsibility and an enormous challenge. I created a bubble. You saw Ambassador Dubach created a bubble. I created a bubble. My bubble was in the South Pacific, and I asked for a non-human version. And so what it gave me was a little robot that looked sort of like a porpoise that hovered a few inches above the sea level and was measuring the temperature of the water so that seagrasses and others in the South Pacific could grow. It would encourage me to build my little robot friend, Dane, and it is what happened to many of the people who came through. They were encouraged to take action, so their imagination took them to a place of creating something. And that's what we're hoping to do with the public portal. We want to hear from all of you about what you think. So please don't leave this session without telling us some of the inventions and ideas that you're hearing at this summit, how you react to them.
Amazing, thank you so much, Henrietta. So people are leaving hopeful, and Stefan, you are leading the Futurium in Berlin. So what have you learned about, or in this place of collective foresight from the 100,000 of people who are engaging every day with this question, how do we want to live? And how can we bring and transform that imagination into agency, into collective action?
First, thank you very much for having me here. And I think many or some of you might not know Futurium. And so I brought in a typical German manner some slides with me, but only 3 of them. So don't be afraid to give you a short insight, I hope. Does it work?
No.
Yes. Now it works. Very good. So what is Futurium? So if you visiting Berlin, you will find Futurium right in the middle of the city, in front of the Chancellery, close to the main station. We consider ourselves a house of futures with the guiding question, how do we want to live? And I think each word of this question is very, very important, and you can interpret it differently. But this is our central question. And we want to translate between different areas of society. We want to be a true science communicator. And the overall goal is to give visitors impulses to shape future and ideally to shape a sustainable future, a future in which we all can live in. And to reach this, we combine exhibition, event spaces, a lab for workshops, of course, analog and digital formats, and even a mobile Futurium, which is touring through rural areas in Germany to bring future thinking also into areas that are not considered to be on the top of the future discussion. We try to connect information, imagination, and sensuous experience, thus creating resonance. I think resonance is a very important word. Resonance is something that goes beyond understanding. Resonance is kind of an emotional connection to the contents, and therefore you will find also artworks in our exhibition. You will find games, you will find installations, so that we really encourage imagination of the people. And overall, we try to strengthen futures literacies, to imagine different futures, and on this base, then think about shaping future. And this is how it looks like. These are our 3 program columns. It's the exhibition, as I mentioned. And interestingly enough, we don't only have the technology section, we also have a section about nature and our relationship to nature, and we also have a section about our relationship to ourselves, about society. We also talk about, for instance, the futures of democracy. And we have the forum for events, we have the Futurium Lab, I already mentioned it. And to come close to your great portal, Henrietta, we also have kind of a tool that goes in a similar direction. We have the database of hopes, which is a bit, I would say, it is not that technically advanced than your tool. It is more low threshold. So people are coming and going into Futurium, and the first thing what they see is the database of hopes. And there they can type in their personal wishes for the future. And if you collect this data, and we have now more than 700,000 wishes in this database, then you see over time a certain hierarchy. It's changing between, for instance, climate change or the solutions for climate change, which was very popular like 5 years ago. Today, the most mentioned wish is peace. Peace has made it to the top of the list. We will talk about it later, but it is like a haptic and a digital experience, and so I hope I could somehow describe how we do it. It's really trying to encourage futures literacy through different means, through resonance, through connection of emotion and facts and cognitive approaches, and I think so far we reach something which we can talk about later.
Thank you for this very fascinating insight, Stefan. It's interesting also like that hope resonates so much and very similar in Japan. Katherine, so the Royal Institution has been bringing scientists and the public together for more than 2 centuries, and your promise is that science lives here. why is it so important that citizens are engaging with science and are learning about these scientific breakthroughs for the next 5, 10, 25 years as well?
Thank you, that's great. And thank you for the invitation to be part of this fantastic panel. And as you say, the Royal Institution has a fair amount of history behind it. It founded in 1799. And I joined much more recently than that. And my biggest surprise on joining was the scale of the audience demand for the activities and the programs that we offer, which in many ways are quite a kind of classic form of science communication. Lots of lecture talks, lots of hands-on activities for families. And these audiences that we serve see science as part of their identity. They see science as part of their culture, as an individual, as a family, as part of a friendship group. They see science as something that they want to participate in, and they're looking for experiences to do that. And I think for the Royal Institution's audiences, many of them are quite proactive, so they'll look at what talks are coming up in London that I could go and see, or what's coming up online that I could tune into. But there are lots and lots more people like them. And I think that they have a real appetite that deserves to be nourished and sated. I think they have an entitlement to participate in this cultural endeavour, this very human endeavour that we call science. And I think that form of cultural participation in science is a little undervalued, I think. We perhaps focus on other very important topics like the importance of education for making informed decisions as a citizen or as a wider society, and that, of course, is really important. But there's also this need for cultural participation, which I think deserves to be a bit higher up the agenda, because I think this cultural participation, and I think we might dig into this as a panel, I think this is a kind of bedrock for building trust between the public and between science.
Yes, we will come back to this question, but you mentioned something that touched me very deeply, is this science identity. How can these experiences help the science identity, and how can people feel they are part of the conversation, they belong into the conversation, and that they're not just left out, and it's something that is not for me, it's abstract, it's complex, I don't have to deal with it, right? It's often the first reaction. What is it, your experience? How can you, I feel that you have like this inspiration and this passion for the topic. How can you bring that across?
I'm really passionate about science as a type of identity because so many people have said to me over the years, oh, science is not for me. And I think, how unfair. Why shouldn't you feel that science is for you? We can't all go to be top academics, groundbreaking researchers. I mean, many of you in the room will be, of course. But we can't all aspire to that. But why can't we all aspire to a different form of everyday participation in this kind of work? I think that if you contrast it with something like music, perhaps we didn't all excel at music in our school days. But you never hear people saying, oh, I didn't like music at school, so I just don't engage with it anymore. We all engage with music. We all feel an entitlement to make music part of our personal identity, something we choose to do in our spare time. Why would science be any different from that? I'm really passionate about giving more people the opportunity to participate culturally in science, in part because I think those opportunities to do that are not equally distributed across society. There are perhaps more opportunities if you live in a city or if you come from a family that does sciencey things at the weekends anyway. And so I'm passionate about giving more people those kind of opportunities. I think it's really important.
Thank you so much. So giving people the opportunity that they are included. Yeah. So this is the part of inclusion of our panel. Maybe someone of you two want to elaborate on how this inclusion happens and how not only they feel part of the conversation, but drive the conversation and people feel they are shapers of the future.
So I'll give you an example from UNICEF. So when you're dealing with children all over the world, they're very excited about the future. They know they're in it, but they also feel that we're all in the jobs and they're not really yet part of it. So they're always trying to get into the conversation, to your point. They want to have influence. They want to be part of things. And one of the things we found that really related were comic books. And if any of you are comic book readers, many of you will have found that there are superheroes in the comic books. And it is a way that science comes to a child because they dream that they will have superpowers of some sort. They all become, they begin to imagine what the world could be in the future if they could fly, if they could save a tree, if they could do something. So it's empowering, and it is including the young in a way that's irreplaceable, because it gives them the sense that they are part of our world and that they can shape it and influence us.
I would add to this, I would even say a bit, imagination is our superpower, I would say. Imagination, there is this famous word of Einstein who said that he appreciates imagination above knowledge because knowledge is limited and imagination encircles the world. And I think imagination is this combination of of course, knowledge, but also emotions, artistic feelings. It's humanity. It's the superpower of humanity, and I totally agree. We need formats that encourage this imagination. You mentioned comic books. We now bring out each year a little comic book which accompanies our future or focus topic, which we have each year. This year we have agriculture as the focus topic, futures of agriculture, and we have a comic for this one. And maybe another thing, what is important to really bring people in, we call it closeness to real life. This is one of our principles, closeness to real life, to bring these big questions about technology, about ethics, about AI and how it can shape our future, to bring it down to concrete situations that somehow resonate with people's lives, and make it clear that this can truly influence your personal life. And then it is easier to start a conversation. There's one example. Last year we had a focus topic around circular economy, and we somehow showed the people how many rare materials, resources are part of their mobile phones. And how many mobile phones, more than 200 million, by the way, are just stored somewhere because they are too old and not fancy enough. So we have in Germany more than 200 million smartphones somewhere, not used, and they are full of rare materials which could be used for something better. And by the way, which were produced under very, very social critical or socially critical circumstances. So this brings like a big topic to a very concrete situation, and then we have a conversation and can at least start a good discussion about it.
And I love the comic book example. It's a great format, you know. And I think it's doing two things that are really important in effective science communication. One is that it's a bit playful. We can have fun making our own comic books or reading comic books or acting them out or whatever it is we want to do. And that sense of playfulness, which is a very human approach, is sometimes lost in, you know, the way that we talk about science in a wider society, because sometimes there's really important messages to get across about personal health or safety, and that's got to be the focus, and we lose that sense of humans coming together to solve a problem and forming a community, and playfulness being part of our human approach. And the comic book, I think, format gives people permission, you know, children, young people, and all of us grown-ups as well, to be playful and to show that scientists enjoy science, which is one of the biggest kept secrets. I think people who don't meet many scientists, they're really surprised to find out you're all enjoying doing science. That's not really part of the public persona of being a scientist. And I think comic books give us all permission to imagine the future. So we don't need to get bogged down in, is it real? Is this going to be, is this really going to happen? A bit like the public portal to anticipation. Let's think about what it could be and what that means for me. And then maybe I want to have a handle in shaping this future. There's a kind of invitation there as soon as we start to be kind of imaginative about our future.
I really thank you so much for all these examples. I really love this notion of it's so deeply human, making sense of our world, and science is part of our world, and what does it mean and how do we narrate? But then on the other hand, we have like this fun part, this playful part that also has the portal, and a lot of people ask, but I mean, it's serious science, it's serious consequences that this will bring, and what this will mean for us as people, for society. Don't we take away from the seriousness if we approach it in a playful way? So my question to you would be, how do we find this balance?
Well, I love the idea that Katherine had, in which we show that scientists are really enjoying and excited about their work. I mean, I think that would be a really good public campaign, and maybe we can do something at GESDA about that. So, I mean, I think that would really help.
A good inspiration. Yes. Anything to add from you, Stefan?
Yeah, I think it's, of course, not that easy to find the right balance between, let's say, emotion, playfulness, gamification, which is also very important in the Futurium context, and on the other hand, facts, scientific facts. What I would say is that still the core or the content is coming from science, at least in our institution. So we are working closely together with all the big science organizations in Germany, from Helmholtz, Fraunhofer, Leibniz, whoever. They are even stakeholders of our entity. So many contents are directly coming from high-class science. But then you have, of course, the whole area of transmitting it or connecting this scientific thinking with the public. And then you have the gamification, then you have the comic books. And you need to, I think each tool has its role. And so the game is not the content, the game is the means to deliver the content in a certain way. But of course, it helps people to better understand or to better connect with the content.
Yeah, and that building a relationship with science and scientists over a period of time, I think, is really important. There are certain use cases where accuracy is really important. Medical consultations or things like that. Of course, accuracy and factual content can be the highest priority. But in the kinds of cultural participations that we're talking about, accuracy is perhaps less the priority. It's more about building a relationship with science and with scientists that people will go on to build on over their life. And that sense of emotional resonance, the word you used, Stefan, at the beginning, feeling like, I want the people who engage with the scientists at the Royal Institution, I want people to come away feeling like scientists are like me. We have a shared sense of values. We could work together on building this future that we all want to be. And you can layer factual knowledge on top once that kind of base relationship is there. But for a lot of people, science can seem very alien, very cold, very uncaring, very kind of running ahead of where we want it to be or what we want it to do. And so those relationships that people build with science are really important, I think. And if we start there, we can layer on facts as needed.
I see Henrietta wants to react on that.
So I think one thing that we expect out of science is good evidence, and we expect there to be facts behind what is being said, and we really trust then. And that sense of trust in science or the technology that we have, I think is an essential building block for all of us. So it is both feeling that the public feels like us, but it's also that the public has a certain amount of awe, reverence, respect for science and technology. So we really have a responsibility to make sure that it is good science.
So what I also hear is like the relationship to science is the core to building trust. And what we also see is like this eroding trust in our institutions, in science, and how like the responsibility that we have, the different institutions, how can we make a difference, especially today where we have a proliferation of conspiracy theories. Everyone can be an expert on the internet. We all know how fast can it go and the potential of manipulation that is there. So how can we make sure that people can trust science, and how can we build this trust?
It's a great prompt, because there's a philosopher whose work I really admire called Professor Honora O'Neill, and she talks about, in relation to trust in science, she said you can't seek to be trusted. You can't just say, I'd like you to trust me. People are onto that. What you have to do is strive to be trustworthy. You have to do all of the things in the background that people think you have. You have to have that integrity. You have to have those systems in place, and that you seek to be trustworthy, and then you earn that trust. And of course, trust in science is very brittle. It can be very easily lost, and we've seen that in some of the public debates in recent years about science. And I think the work that we all do as science communicators, as scientists, and as policymakers is building up that trust, one conversation at a time sometimes, by demonstrating our trustworthiness, by demonstrating that we're listening as well as speaking, by demonstrating that we are living up to those ideals that people have for science. I think that's true.
I would add two points to that. The first is, I think it's also important to show the struggles of science, also the limits of science. I mean, there's falsification. It's a necessary principle of science. So there are, let's say, hypotheses that prove to be false and have to be further developed. And to show this whole process is, I think, a good thing. Nothing to hide. It's just very human to find a better solution than the solution before. I think this is very important, the other thing is that it's also important to bring science together with other areas of life in a truly interdisciplinary approach, because the scientific approach alone is not yet something that shapes the life. There is intermediate things. There is politics. There is society. There is public discussion, there's media. And so we bring all these forces or people from different areas of life together on a podium, and we try to discuss a problem from different perspectives and also show, I would call it the conflict of objective that is connected with each major future topic. And this makes it more interesting, more colorful, and also shows the complexity at the end.
Absolutely, and I think it's also, it can become even a form of soft power, and it's also important for diplomacy. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that, Henrietta.
There might be two thoughts there. One is, picking up on this discussion, the translators of much of the science and technology are companies, businesses. And so the products and services that they create out of the science are what the public sees, what the citizenry, right. How they connect with the science. And they're very excited about what might be coming out, and their reactions to how they would use it is always interesting to see, because they will sometimes use a technology or some piece of science differently than you expect. It's like a cell phone. When I first saw the cell phones coming out in Africa, everyone was using them as calculators, and then you come home to the United States and everyone's using it as a camera. So, they're used for different things. So when you think about this question of trust, when you're doing peace negotiations, it is trust that drives everything. And it is the hope that others feel like you, that the world needs peace, and like your respondents coming to the Futurium. It is difficult to do the negotiations because many of us who are diplomats do not know what the scientists are actually accomplishing. And we are now moving into the stage where ultra-fast decision-making, and some of it unconscious, will be made in the field. And that is something that I think diplomats will struggle with, but it's an important area, and GESDA will certainly encourage discussions there. But the general public will have qualms about how to make decisions that way. We'll also have qualms to be able to hear the thoughts, the unspoken thoughts of a person next to us. But it's coming. And so if a person is not thinking what they're saying, we will hear it. So this trust barometer, I think, will change enormously. And we have to get ready for a future in which unconscious thoughts are going to be heard by others.
Thank you so much for all these answers. I have so many more questions, but probably our audience, someone from the audience has a question I would like to open up. We take 1, 2, 3 questions. There are mics circulating.
Thank you, Magdalena Skipper, Editor-in-Chief of Nature. A great conversation. I would like to ask the panel for your opinion on how important is it that we convey the creativity which is part of science. So sometimes, music was mentioned, for example, by the panel, and we often portray science in opposition to the arts, which often citizens embrace, and yet, in my view, there's a great deal of creativity in science. Should we be talking about this more, about the how, not just the facts that come out at the end in the process?
I would clearly say yes, we should. I mentioned Einstein before, and the full quote starts with the sentence, he says, "I'm enough of the artist to draw freely upon my imagination." So he sees himself not only as a scientist, but he was also a musician, by the way. So he's a great example how important it is to connect these spheres. And what we have seen at Futurium, we have many formats that try to connect arts with science. We have concerts combined with scientific lectures, that it always creates a completely different atmosphere where people are much more open to, let's say, openly discuss complex thoughts that they would not do in other settings. So it does something, and probably some neurologists or psychologists or others, they might describe it better, but it does something with us, with our mind. It opens up and it creates a second space that allows for a better type of conversation than we would have when we would just only present some facts and statistics.
If I may just make a comment on this, this was a really beautiful answer, but you still described a situation where you're using the arts to explain science, but you're not focusing on creativity in science itself. So this, of course, serves the purpose that you described, but I'm wondering if there is unexplored opportunity that we should tap into further.
I would love to see more of that. I think, Magdalena, it would be great to see us convey the importance of creativity in scientific research, because I think that's more accurate. I love the quote by Isaac Asimov, who says, the sound of breakthroughs being made in science, I'm misquoting probably, the sound of breakthroughs being made is not eureka, it's like, oh, that's odd. You go chasing off down some finding what's wrong with this data, So the creativity and the trying to solve a problem and having to bring all of your, skills and experience to that is something that is really underplayed in the popular stereotype of science. And it's a problem because it makes scientists seem even odder than they might otherwise be. And it really puts people off from going into science careers or engaging with science. I think it's really interesting, I think, to ask young people what they think about science and scientists, partly because that's where many of our perceptions of the world around us are shaped, and partly because kids tell you what they think. There's no filter, is there? And there's a really dominant stereotype or perception among the young people that I work with, where science is done, right? It's finished. It's a body of facts that have been agreed on. And when scientists go to work every day, they just kind of polish the facts up so they shine a bit more brightly. The idea that scientists are working on things that are not known is a bit baffling, you know? And I think that understanding the role of creativity and working at the frontier of knowledge on what is not yet understood or known is really powerfully exciting.
And I would also say that we should show the creative potential of failure as well.
Yes.
Because this is something that has to do with creativity and in science. And we have a section in Futurium where we show different failures and what came out of them. And sometimes something even better came out of them because people didn't resignate after they failed, but they failed better, as Beckett would say, fail better, fail again, fail better. And I think this is directly connected with creativity. Sorry for...
No, excellent points. So I just wanted to add one more thing that's not quite where Magdalena was asking, but when in Yemen, during the conflict, it was just terrorizing to many of the children. And we found that when they ran into a hospital, if we had them draw pictures, it began to bring out the memories and it brought forth some mental health. It was helpful. But it was that link of the creativity of drawing a picture, either of what they imagined in the future or of what they experienced in the past. And what we don't know is why that works. We don't know why that was true. But we could see that it worked. So that link of creativity with science, it's not as well known as it could be. And there's much that we could do to help the world if we knew more about it.
And if I may add on this, I had an interesting conversation yesterday at the dinner table, and there are discussions where it says we should complement STEM subjects to STEAM, adding arts into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So this soft power of creativity and arts is becoming increasingly more important, I would say. Any other question? There's mics around.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I want to just mention something. At the introductory opening talk, I spoke about science blindness. And I think there's incredible treasures and incredible initiatives in Africa. I want to use one example. A very young scientist developed technology games like boarding games and cell phone games, and to help make science fun. And she was a PhD scientist and then moved over into the educational faculty. And she's now shown that it actually helps kids with cognitive development and visual problems and thinking skills and just help a whole generation of young kids wanting to go into science. So the question is, if there's these opportunities, how do we capture that and support that and develop that further, these wonderful young initiatives?
Yeah, what a great example. I think, and one of the things that I think is probably really key to that being a success is that young scientist's view of what is fun is much more relevant to the other people that she's working with, for whom she's a role model, than my idea of what might be fun, right? And I think that in the science communication that we do at the Royal Institution, we're trying to work with influencers who are as close to our target population as possible, because that authenticity is what makes it work. Nobody needs to see what I think would make a good TikTok, right? We work with TikTok influencers, and then that message lands with much more kind of resonance, and I think that's really important. Also, I think we need to make space to recognize the value of this role modeling work and these projects and programs within a science research career. Sometimes it can seem like a nice thing to do around the edges, but if what we're saying in this session is this is critical to having a society that can make use of science in the ways we want it to, then this work, these role modeling projects, are just as important as the kind of lab-based work and the data gathering.
We are running, unfortunately, out of time, and I have one last question for all of you. So Katherine, Stefan, Henrietta, what is your main key takeaway from this conversation? And what is the call to action to the audience, so the scientists, diplomats, and also citizens that are sitting here in the audience? Do you want to start?
All right. So make science interactive. Let us talk to each other. The young today want to talk to us, and they want to talk to each other, and they want to talk to the world. And so we've just got to be more interactive. And I guess if we're going to pick up Catherine's idea, selfies of you laughing together and having fun doing science would really help all of us. And please tell us in the Citizens Forum the areas that you feel we should be focusing on with the public. This is to your good suggestion in Africa. So, thank you.
What I took away from the GESDA summit so far, and also from this conversation, is that there are many conflicts of objectives out there. We have technology which can shape our life for the better, but also has many disadvantages or problems, and we have different sectors of life that also have, let's say, conflicts of objectives, but we should not be afraid of these conflicts. I think these conflicts of goals are a typical part, or is a core part of human life. The whole human life is more or less an ongoing conflict of objectives, and we should embrace these objectives. I would encourage everybody to embrace these conflicts and draw energy out of it, and then use this energy to create concrete solutions for these conflicts. And these concrete solutions at the end will create other conflicts. And so this whole circle of innovation and future and human life will continue. But I wouldn't think that this is unusual or should make us afraid. We should be encouraged by it.
I love the optimism in that response, Stefan. I feel like the world needs a bit more optimism. And my takeaway is that science is not just for scientists, that we need to support scientists to do the work of communicating and interpreting and translating and sharing, but we also need to not leave them to be the only people doing that, that all of us, I think, have a role to be ambassadors for science and for the kind of science that we want in our future.
Thank you so much all for this beautiful call to actions. For me, what resonated deeply was this resonance, that everything is about relations and that we are all ambassadors of bringing science more outside in the scientific knowledge, making it accessible to all so that we can find solution and create innovation and turn it into something very concrete. And we are now just very close. I have very good news. We are very close to the apéro. So thank you all very much. First of all, to our panelists for joining us today for this fascinating discussion. And to all of you who have been here in the room, you can continue the conversation at the cocktail that is taking place now in the Globe. And with that, thank you again. Have a nice evening.